In episode 61 is Lionel's final anointment trial, so the story begins at Cat's lair. So inside the sword chamber, the sword sensed that there was something wrong, or something was up. So Snarf was the first to arrive, and he thought that Lionel was in the sword chamber, but he's not. Then Tiger was the next to show up, so he's asking Snarf, is he here? Unfortunately, none of the rest of the Thundercats, when they show up, he isn't there. Lionel, that is. So, Chitara says, this is weird. Lionel's not supposed to use his sword during the anointment trials. He knows that, Chitara, Snore says. But for some reason, the Sword of Omens just sensed that something was up. Or in Snore's case, something must be off. Then Panthro went next to plead his case to say, I really cannot blame the sword for being so all worked up. Well, Lionel's final test is coming up, he said. So we know what this means. That means, according to Panthro, what he says in his case, Lionel must face the deadliest enemy of all time, the baddest of the bad himself, Mumm-Ra, and then defeat him once and for all. Now you can tell that Snarf was really scared to death. Can't say I blame him. So Chitara asked a question. Why is everyone so worried about? So flashback in episodes 37, 42, 46, and 50, we've already known that Lionel had already passed the trial of strength with Panthro, the trial of speed with Chitara, the trial of cunning with the Thunder Kittens, and the trial of mind power with Tigra. The bell to the present in the sword chamber of Cat's lair. That's when Tiger says, well, even after that fourth test, he was still all worn out. Well, Wily Kid happens to agree with Tiger, but even she says in her case that Lionel has never faced an opponent like Mumm-Ra without his sword before. Of course, Panther has his turn to plead his case to agree with her. So he says, as powerful and evil as Mumm-Ra is, of course Lionel has to face him without his sword to protect him. So who knows what would happen? So also hearing the news in the tomb chamber of the Black Pyramid is Mumm-Ra himself. He found out that Lionel's face to face with him is his final test. So Mumm-Ra had pleaded himself a case to say this is true. So anyway, now that Lionel's on his way to the Black Pyramid, so now it's up to Mumm-Ra to come up with a plan to prevent him from succeeding. So, so what was Mumm-Ra's plan? He has to destroy Lionel himself before the end of the day to make sure he failed his final test. So anyway, back with Lionel. So Lionel's plan was simply this, was to get there to the Black Pyramid before sunrise. So meanwhile at Castle Plondar, Mumm-Ra had appeared out of nowhere in the dinette meeting room. So Sly, the leader of the mutants, was asking Mumm-Ra what favor does he want from him and the mutants. So Mumm-Ra explained to the mutants that at any minute Lionel will show up at his pyramid to destroy him. So what he wanted from the mutants is just to destroy him before he gets near. So Jackalman went first to ask a question. Can't this wait until morning? No, it cannot, Mumm-Ra said. The monkey has his turn to ask a question. What about your powers? Then Sly, the mutant's leader, had just told Mumm-Ra this case. Well, I agree with Monkey, and if that's the case, maybe you should destroy him yourself, he said. Well, that insult just made Mumm-Ra upset. So Mumm-Ra had pleaded a case to say, how dare you mock me? And so with the use of his powers, he tore the dining room table apart. Now the mutants were very scared. So after that, Mumm-Ra says, go now, do as I tell you to do. And so the mutants agreed, and then they head off. So meanwhile, back with Lionel, he's almost there to the Black Pyramid. That's when a Mo-Man had bumped into him by accident. So before Lionel could head his way, that's when the spirit of his mentor Jaga appeared out of nowhere. So Jaga told Lionel to plead his case to say, you must be on edge. Why don't you rest for a while before you go against Mumm-Ra? Jaga suggested. Well, Lionel has his turn to plead his case to say the creatures only attack at night, he said. So Jaga's spirit wanted to know from Lionel, has he got inside the Black Pyramid? Lionel says, nope. Not yet, but I sure will. So Jaga wanted to know from Lionel if he's sure he made a wise decision and it was the right choice to make. So Lionel pleaded his case to say, "You've always taught me well. You've been my teacher, my friend, and my mentor," he said. "But I think it's about time I started finding my own way," Lionel suggested. "Then so be it," Jaga's spirit said. And after he disappeared, that's when Lionel says, "Wait!" But Jaga asked him why. "You don't really need my advice. You made the choice of your own," he said. And that's the thing you know, that's when Lionel saw that there were mutants coming to attack him. So there's Gentleman and Monkey and a couple of sky cutters and Slide and the nose diver. So Slide made a contact with his mutant friends to say, "Look for Lino. He's in the fourth quadrant somewhere," he said. And so the mutants begin to attack Lino out of nowhere in the fourth quadrant. So back with Lionel, after he found out about the three vehicles that are coming to attack, he ran off. And then he continues to run and run and run and run and run. Until finally at last, thanks to the nose diver that accidentally shot a statue with a hole in the ground, that's when Lionel has his chance to escape. So when Jackalman, who arrived first in the Sky Cutter, he asked Sly the question, "Did we get him?" Well, Sly says that they did, but he made his case clear to say that Lionel's never getting out of there alive, he said. Or at least that's what Sly thought. And so after that, the mutants head off. So back with Lionel after he woke up, he found out that he's in a strange secret room, something he's never seen before. Then he approached the hieroglyphics on the wall. And so he then said to himself that the passage must lead somewhere, so he goes to the room on the right. So he did. So what he saw was unbelievable, a treasure room. But when Montet refused, he accused Lionel of being a thief and a tomb raider and started attacking him. But unfortunately, he couldn't stop Lionel. So he says, "Go ahead, take the treasures." But Lionel refused to take them. So Lionel was asking who he is, and that's when Montet had introduced himself. Then Montet made it a compliment to Lionel to say that he could have been a god, but Lionel says thanks but no thanks. So Montet explains to Lionel that he is strong, but not exactly as he is right this minute. And if that wasn't bad enough, that's when Montet had also confessed that he hasn't been worshipped for so long, for 1,000 years, and that's why he's been so weak lately. Also, Montet confessed that the door on the right contains the pathway to the demon priest, the baddest of the bad himself, Mumm-Ra. So Lionel says that that's the path he wanted to take, but when Montet refused to let Lionel take that path, but then Lionel tells him that he didn't have a choice, that he must go there. So after Lionel pushes the door, that's when Lionel heads off to the next room. So, in the next room is what Lionel didn't see before, the River of Doom and a boatman. So, when Lionel calls for the boatman to get his attention, that's when the boatman asked him what favor he wants from him. So, what Lionel was telling the boatman is to take him to the Black Pyramid right away. But when the boatman refused, that's when Lionel says, "You must. I'll pay for whatever the price." And that's when, in response, the boatman just told Lionel that the only price he's going to have is Lionel's own destruction. And so the boatman attacks Lionel. Now, don't ask me how Lionel got onto the boat. That's when the boatman puts his hand on Lionel's shoulder. And that's when they were both on the boat at the exact same time, which drew on Lionel's strength. But luckily for Lionel, he managed to get his strength back. But then both of them got thrown off the boat. But luckily for Lionel, he got back on, but not so for the boatman. He disintegrated. Now that Lionel's on the boat, he can take himself to the pyramid's tomb chamber. So meanwhile there, watching it happen in the cauldron was Mumm-Ra. So when Mumm-Ra had found out what is going on, that's when he was calling Lionel's name. Back with Lionel on the boat, and of course guiding himself on the River of Doom, that's when Lionel heard Mumm-Ra's voice. So, you come to seek me without your sword, huh? Yes, I am, Lionel said. So after Lionel had pleaded his case with Mumm-Ra to say that he's seeking him out and wishes to meet him face to face, well, Mumm-Ra's voice says, then you must have come a long way. He's not kidding. So back in the tomb chamber, Mumm-Ra does what he always does. He transforms himself from a mummified form to the monstrous form, with the ancient spirits of evil statues, of course, just like what any bad guy would do. So long story short, back with Lionel still on the boat paddling on the River of Doom, but what Lionel doesn't even realize is that he saw a strange fog that's coming up from out of nowhere and is suffocating him, so he couldn't breathe. Finally, long story short, good news for Lionel, he manages to get through. But now, according to Lionel, he's facing with a bigger problem. The ceiling's coming down. Well, good news for Lionel, he manages to make it through all right. But now, the bad news is that because of the battle he had with the ceiling that's coming down, the stick broke in half. Back at the Pyramid's tomb chamber, what Mumm-Ra saw was unbelievable, that Lionel had survived. So long story short, back with Lionel after he took care of the creature that he recently defeated, he continues on. That's when, but out of nowhere, in the tomb chamber, Mumm-Ra just made things difficult for Lionel. So back with Lionel speaking the witch, that's when Mumm-Ra was asking Lionel a question. What's the matter? Are you seasick or something? But fortunately, thanks to Lionel, he managed to survive, despite a minor setback. Well, back with Mumm-Ra, well, he seems to be impressed at first. So he then pleaded a case to Lionel to say, okay, let's see if you can handle the trial fire for a change. So he summons the Inflamer to destroy him. So back with Lionel still on the River of Doom, in a boat of course, that's when he sees the Inflamer flying by, which every attack, well, luckily for Lionel, he manages to keep down. So, when the Inflamer had flown by the second time, it set the stick on fire. So when Lionel saw the Inflamer for the third time, what Lionel did is that he jumped up and raised on the back of the Inflamer for a while. Then Lionel causes the Inflamer to go into the water, and there he disintegrated. So back with Lionel, now that he took care of the Inflamer, he gets caught in the water's current for a moment. Although Lionel has struggled into the water a little bit, and then he pleaded his case to say he has to get himself out of there. But luckily for him, he manages to grab the chain. But when Lionel looked up, he didn't see one row of chains, he saw two rows. So he manages to grab both of the rings on the chains at once. So as Lionel was climbing higher and higher, went back with Mumm-Ra in his tomb chamber, now that he saw that Lionel had survived all the tough obstacles, so he also pleaded himself a case to say now he's on his way to the tomb chamber itself. So long story short, back with Lionel, good news for him, he found the lid to get himself out of the water. And once he got out of the water, he saw the light in the doorway up ahead. So he walked further and further to where the light was coming from. Well, good news for him, he makes it to the tomb chamber. At first, Lionel thought that the tomb chamber was empty, but not for long, and that's when Lionel realizes that he wasn't alone, and that's when he's face to face with Mumm-Ra himself. So, after Lionel had dodged Mumm-Ra's attack, that's when Mumm-Ra had pleaded his case to say, so you come a long way to meet your doom, Mumm-Ra said. It's not over yet, not by a long shot, Lionel said. So now it's a battle between Mumm-Ra and Lionel, and it continues to go on and on and on and on and on. And every attack that Mumm-Ra made, that's when Lionel dodges every attack. So long story short, back with Mumm-Ra, he continues to have a battle with Lionel, and it went on and on and on. That was until when Mumm-Ra accidentally shot at the pillar instead of at Lionel, he then levitates the pillar to throw it at Lionel. Instead, by mistake, that's when Mumm-Ra was horrified to see that the pillar had cracked his sarcophagus instead. When Mumm-Ra saw what had happened, he was horrified. That's when Lionel thought, aha, so that explains why Mumm-Ra was recharging all the time, because it's his sarcophagus that was the source of his power. So, when Lionel realizes that Mumm-Ra's sarcophagus was cracked, so what Lionel did was unbelievable. He picks up the sarcophagus and then he says, "It's over! Goodbye, Mumm-Ra!" And so Lionel throws the sarcophagus into the cauldron, which caused the cauldron to explode in the water. So finally back with Mumm-Ra, he disintegrated, and good news for Lionel, he managed to escape and leaves the Black Pyramid. After leaving the Black Pyramid back with Lionel, he hears the voice of his mentor Jaga to say, "You did it! You actually did it! You faced your biggest enemy, Mumm-Ra, and defeated him." Of course, even better, Jaga's spirit told Lionel, "You've won, and you did it without help from anyone." So Lionel apologized to the spirit of his mentor, and the reason he's apologizing, he said that regrettably he could have wished for more advice more than what he's given. Unfortunately, Lionel says in his case, if he wishes to be the leader of the Thundercats and then take the job, he has to take what's necessary. So, in other words, he has to take it seriously. In other words, according to what Lionel said also, is that he has to make his own choices, and Jaga happens to agree with him. Also, Jaga says, by you making your own choices, that means you have passed your final test. And so after that, Jaga disappeared. So Lionel says, "Wait! Does this mean I'll never see you again?" "No," Jaga says, "I'm afraid not. But I'll be here whenever you need me." And so after that, Jaga disappeared. So yes, you've heard right. Lionel had passed all 5 tests. So meanwhile, back at Cat's Lair, it was a huge celebration. And yes, you also heard right. All the good guys are there. The Burbles, the Wollos, the Warrior Maidens, Snowman of Hook Mountain, and his sidekick Snowmeow. Everybody's there. And of course, so were his friends, the Thundercats. And even better, Lionel did earn the right to become the leader of the Thundercats by getting his Sword of Omens and his Claw Shield back. So everybody cheered. So back at the Black Pyramid, there's only one question left. Is Mumm-Ra really gone for good? And if not, what kind of new tricks will Mumm-Ra have? There's only one thing to say for sure. So that ends episode 61.